Kang Min-jun's hands trembled as he stood outside the children's hospital ward at 3 in the morning, watching through the window as his 5-year-old daughter slept with IV tubes in her tiny arm. He'd missed her first breath, her first word, her first steps. 5 years of her life, of all 3 of their lives, stolen from him by someone he'd trusted more than anyone in the world. And the woman who'd given birth to these children, the woman he'd spent 5 years searching for like a man possessed, stood 15 feet away at the nurse's station filling out forms, and she looked at him like he was a complete stranger, because to her, he was. 5 years of memories, their love, their nights together, the moment she'd conceived his children, all of it locked away behind walls of trauma her brain had built to protect her from something so terrible it had nearly killed her. Min-jun pressed his palm against the cold, hostile glass and made himself a promise. He would get those memories back. He would find out who'd done this to her, and he would make them pay with everything they had. But what Min-jun didn't know, what he couldn't possibly know yet, was that the person responsible for Amara's attempted murder was closer than he'd ever imagined. And in exactly 48 hours, when the truth finally came out, it would destroy everything he thought he knew about his own family. Hold on, before we go any further, I need to know something. Did you watch part 1 of this story? Because if you haven't, you're about to be completely lost. This is part 2, and trust me, you need the context of how we got here. Part 1 is linked in the description below. Hit that like button right now if you're ready to see how this story ends, and drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from, because I love seeing how God connects us across continents through these stories. And once again, we want to wish everyone Merry Christmas. I'm so grateful to share these stories with you. May your holidays be filled with love and family. Now let me tell you what happened in the 2 weeks after Min-jun discovered he was a father.
K Afro Tales. The weak will become strong one day.
The first morning, Min-jun showed up at the hospital at 6 a.m. with coffee for Amara and breakfast for 3 children who didn't know him. Kamsi, the oldest boy with his serious face and calculating eyes, studied Min-jun like he was a puzzle that needed solving. Aluchi, pure chaotic energy even at dawn, immediately tried to climb Min-jun like a tree, chattering in rapid Korean-English mix about his sister's fever and the scary hospital, and whether Min-jun knew any good games. And Zuri, the youngest, the little girl whose dangerous fever had brought them all to Seoul in the first place, watched Min-jun with enormous eyes that made his chest ache because they looked exactly like his own mother's eyes, and he didn't know yet what that genetic similarity would eventually mean. Amara watched Min-jun interact with the children from across the hospital room, her body still screaming recognition every time he moved or spoke, her mind supplying absolutely nothing about who he was or why her heart raced when he smiled at Kamsi's serious questions. The doctor had confirmed it yesterday. Genetic markers showed 99.9% probability that this man was the biological father of all 3 children. The children she'd raised alone for 5 years, the children she'd loved fiercely while having no memory of their conception, had a father, and he was here. And he was looking at them like they were miracles he'd been searching for his entire life. "Why didn't you come before?" Kamsi asked Min-jun that first morning, his 5-year-old voice carrying the weight of every time he'd asked his mother where his daddy was and gotten the answer that daddy lived far away and didn't know about them. Min-jun knelt down to Kamsi's eye level, and Amara saw his throat work as he swallowed hard before answering. "I didn't know you existed," he said, honestly, his voice rough with emotion. "Your mother and I lost each other 5 years ago. I've been looking for her ever since. I would have been here from the beginning if I'd known about you. I promise you that." "Do you promise to stay now?" Zuri asked, quietly, speaking up for the first time, her small voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Min-jun said, and Amara heard the conviction in that single word like a vow. "I'm not going anywhere. If your mother will let me, I want to be here for all of you, every single day." He kept that promise. For 2 weeks, Min-jun showed up at the hospital every morning before the children woke and didn't leave until they fell asleep. He learned that Kamsi liked to arrange his toys in precise patterns and got frustrated when Alucci disrupted his systems. He discovered that Alucci could make anyone laugh within 5 minutes and had memorized every children's song ever written in 3 languages. He found out that Zuri was quiet not because she was shy, but because she was always watching, always absorbing, always 3 steps ahead in understanding the emotions of everyone around her. He brought books and read to them in Korean, switching to English when they asked, his voice doing different character voices that made even Kamsi crack a smile. He brought art supplies and spent hours drawing with Zuri, who had an eye for color that surprised him. He brought building blocks and let Alucci destroy Kamsi's carefully constructed towers, then helped Kamsi learn that sometimes chaos could be fun too. And Amara watched. She watched this stranger, who wasn't a stranger, learn her children like he'd been preparing for this moment his entire life. She watched him ask the nurses about Zuri's medication schedule and memorize it faster than she had. She watched him research pediatric viral infections on his phone and ask the doctors intelligent questions about treatment protocols. She watched him answer work calls in the hallway, speaking in rapid professional Korean about construction contracts and business deals, then come back into the room and get down on the floor to play dinosaurs with Alucci without missing a beat. She watched him, and her body kept insisting she knew him, and her mind kept supplying nothing, and the cognitive dissonance was making her feel like she was losing her mind all over again. On day 5, Min Jun brought Pastor David and Grace to the hospital. Amara hadn't told him about them. He'd found them on his own, tracked down the church that had saved her 5 years ago, and showed up at their door with flowers and a donation large enough to fund their community programs for the next decade. Pastor David, the Nigerian man who'd found Amara unconscious in an alley behind shipping containers and chosen to save her rather than call authorities, shook Min Jun's hand in the hospital corridor while Grace pulled Amara aside with tears in her eyes. "That man loves you," Grace said quietly in Igbo, the language of privacy between them. "Even if you don't remember him, that man has been searching for you like a man who lost half his soul. You see how he looks at you, like you're the answer to every prayer he said for 5 years." "But I don't remember him," Amara whispered back, her own eyes burning with frustrated tears. "Grace, I look at him and my body recognizes him. My heart races. I feel safe and terrified at the same time, but my mind gives me nothing. No memories, no context, just this terrible feeling that I should know him and I don't." "Maybe that's enough to start with," Grace said gently. "Maybe you don't need the memories to see who he is now. Look at how he is with your children, with his children. That tells you who he is." But it wasn't enough, because on day 7, something happened that changed everything. Min Jun's business partner, Kong Sung-ho, showed up at the hospital unannounced, walking into the children's ward with his expensive suit and calculated smile, stopping dead when he saw Amara sitting beside Zuri's bed. His face went through a rapid sequence of expressions: surprise, recognition, confusion, then something that looked uncomfortably like guilt. Min Jun stood up from where he'd been building blocks with Kamsi, tension immediately visible in his shoulders. "Sung-ho," Min Jun said, his voice carefully neutral, "what are you doing here?" "I heard you'd been spending time at the hospital. Wanted to check on you, make sure everything was all right with the merger paperwork, but I see you're occupied." "This is Amara," Min Jun said, and something in his tone had shifted to protective. "My children's mother." Sung-ho's expression flickered. "Amara, of course. I should have realized." He took a step closer, studying her face with an intensity that felt invasive. "You don't remember me, do you?" The question was strange enough that Amara frowned. "Should I?" "We met 5 years ago, briefly. At Min Jun's house, actually. You were working there." And just like that, something clicked in Amara's fragmented memory. Not a visual memory, those were still locked away, but an auditory one. A voice. This voice, speaking Korean in a tone that had made her stomach turn. "You were there," Amara said slowly, her heart starting to race as her body started reacting to something her mind couldn't fully access. The day something happened that made me leave." Min Jun's head snapped toward her, his face intense. "You remember something?" I remember a voice, Amara said, her breathing getting shallow as her body started reacting to something her mind couldn't fully access, asking about me, asking if I was a problem. Seung-ho went very still. Min-jun looked between them, and Amara could see his mind working, connecting dots she didn't have enough information to connect herself. What day? Min-jun asked Seung-ho, his voice dropping to something dangerous. What day were you at my house asking about Amara? I don't recall the specific, but Min-jun cut him off. What day? Seung-ho's professional mask cracked slightly. It was 5 years ago, maybe 5 months into our business merger. I came to your house to discuss the contract terms, and I noticed your household staff seemed rather attached to you. I asked if that was going to be a problem for our arrangement. Amara's hands started shaking. She didn't have the full memory, but her body was screaming that this was important, that this moment mattered in ways she couldn't articulate. And what did I say? Min-jun asked, his voice deadly quiet now. You said she was just staff, Seung-ho replied, watching Amara's face carefully as he spoke. You said whatever she might think was developing between you was purely in her imagination, and you said you were ending that arrangement if I didn't trust your commitment to our business deal. The words hit Amara like a physical blow. Her vision tunneled, her breath caught in her throat, because even though she still couldn't see the memory visually, she could feel the devastation those words had caused, could feel the knife through her heart, could feel herself standing outside a door somewhere, pregnant and alone, and hearing the man she loved dismiss her as nothing. I was there, Amara whispered, her voice barely audible. I was standing outside your door. I heard you say that. I heard you say I was just staff and what I felt was imagination. Min-jun's face went white. Amara, no. I was talking about ending the business arrangement with Seung-ho if he didn't trust me. I wasn't talking about you. I was trying to protect you from... But Amara wasn't hearing him anymore, because suddenly she was remembering more, not full visual memories, but fragments, feelings, sensations, the weight of ultrasound pictures in her pocket, 3 tiny heartbeats she'd been about to tell him about, the sound of his voice saying those words that made her feel like she'd been gutted. The decision to run, the airport, the terror, and then nothing but darkness and pain and waking up with 7 years of her life erased. I was pregnant, Amara said, tears streaming down her face now. I was standing outside your door with proof I was pregnant, and I heard you say I was nothing to you, so I ran. Min-jun reached for her, but she flinched back, her body's trauma response overriding everything else. Please don't touch me right now. Pastor David, who'd been standing quietly in the corner this entire time, suddenly spoke up. I think you need to see something, he said, pulling out his phone. Amara, I kept evidence from the night I found you. I never showed you because the doctors said triggering your memories too fast could cause psychological damage, but I think you need to see this now. He held up his phone, showing photographs that made Amara's stomach turn. Images of her own body 5 years ago, unconscious, bruised, with clear injection marks on her arm that weren't from any medical procedure. Hospital records showing head trauma consistent with being thrown or pushed rather than a simple fall. Evidence that someone hadn't just drugged her, someone had tried to kill her. Min-jun stared at the photographs, his face cycling through horror, rage, and something that looked like terrible understanding. The injection marks, he said, his voice hollow. Someone drugged you. Someone found you at the airport and drugged you and tried to kill you while you were pregnant with my children. Who? Amara asked, her voice breaking. Who would do that? Min-jun closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, Amara saw something in them that terrified her, because it looked like he knew. It looked like he'd just figured out exactly who was responsible, and the knowledge was destroying him. I need to make a phone call, Min-jun said, his voice eerily calm in a way that suggested he was barely holding himself together. Pastor David, can you show me everything you have, every piece of evidence, every record, everything from that night 5 years ago? Why? Amara asked. What did you just realize?
Minjun looked at her, and the devastation on his face made her chest ache. "I think I know who tried to kill you, and I think I know why, but I need to confirm it before I accuse them, before I destroy my entire family over this."
He left the room with Pastor David, pulling out his phone and dialing a number with shaking hands. Through the window, Amara watched him speak in rapid Korean to whoever was on the other end, his face getting progressively more rigid as the conversation continued. When he hung up, he stood frozen for a long moment, then his knees buckled and he had to grab the wall for support. Pastor David caught him, held him up while Minjun's whole body shook with what looked like silent sobs. Grace put her arm around Amara's shoulders. "Whatever he just learned, it's bad," she whispered. "That's a man whose world just fell apart." When Minjun came back into the room 20 minutes later, his face was a mask of forced calm, but his eyes were still red and his hands were still shaking. He looked at the 3 children playing quietly with their toys, oblivious to the adult trauma unfolding around them, and something in his expression broke. "Can we talk?" he asked Amara quietly. "Somewhere private?" They ended up in an empty consultation room down the hall. Minjun closed the door, leaned against it like he needed the support, and said the words that would change everything. "I hired a forensic investigator to track down where you got your pregnancy test 7 years ago," he said, his voice mechanical, like he'd disconnected from his emotions to survive this. "I wanted to know how someone found out you were pregnant fast enough to intercept you at the airport. The investigator found the clinic, found the doctor, and found records showing that someone paid that doctor a significant amount of money to report any pregnancy tests for women connected to my household." Amara's blood ran cold. "Who paid them?" "The payment came from an account linked to my family's corporation," Minjun said, and his voice cracked. "An account that only 3 people have access to: me, my chief financial officer, and my mother." The words hung in the air like a bomb waiting to detonate. Amara's mind raced through the implications. His mother, Chairman Kang Sa-yun, the cold woman she'd served dinner to 5 years ago, the woman who'd spoken about her in Korean assuming she wouldn't understand, the woman who'd seen immediately that Amara was a threat to her carefully constructed plans. "Your mother tried to kill me," Amara said, and it wasn't a question. "I don't have absolute proof yet," Minjun said, but his voice said he already believed it. "But the investigator is tracking the men who were at the Busan airport that night. Security footage shows you being approached by 2 men. If I can identify them and connect them to my mother, then yes, my mother tried to murder you while you were pregnant with her grandchildren." "Why?" asked Amara, even though part of her already knew the answer. "Because you were going to ruin her plans," Minjun said bitterly. "She'd spent 5 years arranging my engagement to another family, building business alliances through marriage, constructing this perfect empire, and then I fell in love with my maid and got you pregnant and was planning to throw away everything she'd built for a woman she considered beneath our family. So she eliminated the problem, tried to eliminate you. What if this was what happened to my father too? I still have tiny memories of why I came to Seoul," Amara said, suddenly with heavy sadness, the pieces clicking into place with terrible clarity. "My father worked for your construction company. I just found out it was controlled by the Kang family. He died of a sudden heart attack 8 months before I came to Seoul. But what if it wasn't natural? What if he found out something about your company, something your mother couldn't let him expose?" Minjun's face told her she'd just voiced something he'd been afraid to think. "I need to investigate that too. God, Amara, if my mother killed your father and then tried to kill you..." He couldn't finish the sentence, just stood there shaking, a man whose entire understanding of his family had just collapsed around him. Amara found herself moving toward him despite everything, despite not remembering him, despite the confusion and fear and trauma, because in that moment, Min-jun looked exactly like she'd felt 5 years ago, waking up with no memory and 3 babies she couldn't remember creating, completely lost and devastatingly alone. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. "I'm going to prove it," Min-jun said, his voice hardening with resolve. "I'm going to find out exactly what my mother did, and then I'm going to make sure she pays for every single thing she took from us." It took 3 more days. 3 days of Min-jun working with investigators, tracking down the men from the airport, finding the paper trail that connected them to a private security firm his mother had used before, following money and phone records and security footage until the evidence was so overwhelming even Se-yeon couldn't deny it. And on day 10, after they'd found each other in that hospital corridor, Min-jun walked into his mother's office with a police detective, a file folder full of evidence, and a recording device in his pocket that would capture her confession. Amara wasn't there for that confrontation. She was at the hospital with the children, watching the clock and waiting for Min-jun to call and tell her if he'd found the proof he needed. When her phone finally rang 2 hours later, she answered it with shaking hands. "It's done," Min-jun's voice said, and he sounded hollowed out. She confessed, not just to having you drugged and dumped, but to your father, too. He found out about construction shortcuts the company was using, materials that didn't meet safety codes. He was going to report it to authorities, so she had him killed, made it look like a heart attack. Amara sat down hard, her legs giving out. Grace was there immediately, taking the phone from her trembling hands, speaking to Min-jun in her calm pastor's wife voice, while Amara tried to process the fact that the woman who'd served dinner to 7 years ago had murdered her father and then tried to murder her, too. "The police are arresting her now," Min-jun's voice continued over speakerphone, and Amara could hear sirens in the background. "She's being charged with conspiracy to commit murder for your father, attempted murder for you, and about 15 other charges related to corporate fraud and endangering public safety with those construction shortcuts. She's never getting out of prison." "Good," Amara heard herself say, her voice cold in a way she didn't recognize. "I hope she rots there." But when Min-jun came to the hospital 3 hours later after giving his statement to police and watching his mother get arrested, Amara took one look at his devastated face and understood that justice didn't feel as satisfying as she'd imagined, because Min-jun hadn't just lost his mother, he'd lost his entire understanding of who his family was, and that kind of grief was complicated in ways revenge couldn't touch. "I'm sorry," she found herself saying, as he collapsed into a chair in the hospital corridor, looking like he'd aged 10 years in 10 hours. "Don't apologize," Min-jun said roughly. "You're the victim here. You and your father and our children. I'm just the idiot who didn't see what my mother was capable of until it was too late."
"You couldn't have known," Amara said, sitting down beside him, maintaining careful distance but offering the only comfort she could. "Nobody wants to believe their mother is a murderer." "I should have protected you better," Min-jun said, his voice breaking. 5 years ago, I should have come to you immediately that morning instead of making phone calls in the next room. I should have told you what I was doing, that I was breaking my engagement, that I was choosing you. Instead, I let you wake up alone and feel used, and then overhear me say things that made you think you were nothing to me. And because of that, you ran, and my mother found you, and you almost died. You and our children almost died because I didn't communicate better." Amara didn't know what to say to that, because he was right. If he'd been honest with her that morning, she wouldn't have run, wouldn't have been at the airport, wouldn't have been drugged and nearly killed. 5 years of their lives wouldn't have been stolen. But she also understood that he'd been trying to protect her in his own way, even if his methods had backfired catastrophically. "I need to tell you something," Amara said, after a long silence, "and I need you to listen without interrupting." Min-jun nodded, exhaustion evident in every line of his body. "My memories are starting to come back," Amara continued. "Not all of them, not even most of them, but fragments, flashes. I remember your hands. I remember feeling safe with you. I remember loving you so much it terrified me. And I remember standing outside your study door with ultrasound pictures of 3 babies, about to tell you that you were going to be a father, and hearing you say I was just staph and what I felt was imagination. That memory is so clear, Minjun, so vivid. Even knowing now that you were talking about something else, even understanding the context, I can still feel the knife through my heart when I heard those words. Minjun's face crumpled. I'm so sorry. I know you are, Amara said gently, but here's what I need you to understand. I don't remember who you were to me 7 years ago. I don't have those memories yet, and they might never fully come back. The amnesia specialist said the trauma was severe enough that some memories may be permanently locked away. So I can't love you the way I loved you before. I don't know how to do that when I don't remember falling in love with you the first time. I understand, Minjun said quietly, and Amara heard the resignation in his voice. I'm not finished, she continued. I can't love you the way I did before, but I can learn to love you again, if you're willing to be patient, if you're willing to start over with a woman who looks at you and sees a stranger her body recognizes, but her mind doesn't know. If you can handle me having PTSD reactions when you touch me unexpectedly, because my body remembers trauma my mind can't access. If you can give me time to build trust again from nothing. Minjun looked at her, really looked at her, and Amara saw hope kindle in his devastated eyes for the first time since they'd found each other again. Are you saying, he started, but stopped like he was afraid to finish the question. I'm saying I want to try, Amara said. Not jump back into what we had before, because that's gone and we can't get it back. But maybe we can build something new, something different but still good, for us and for our children. I will wait as long as you need, Minjun said, his voice fierce with emotion. I will be patient. I will earn your trust again every single day. I will show you who I am now, not just tell you who I was before. And if you never get those memories back, if you never remember falling in love with me the first time, then I will just have to make you fall in love with me all over again.
Despite everything, the trauma, the confusion, the grief, the exhaustion, Amara smiled. That's very presumptuous of you. I'm a businessman, Minjun replied, and she saw the tiniest hint of humor in his eyes. I know how to close a deal. I'm not a business deal, Amara said, but her smile widened. No, Minjun agreed, suddenly serious. You're the woman I've loved for 7 years, the woman I searched for like a man possessed, the mother of my children, the strongest person I've ever met because you survived something that should have killed you and then built a life from nothing with no memories to guide you. You're not a business deal, you're everything. Amara's breath caught, and in that moment, sitting in a hospital corridor at 2 a.m, after the longest and most emotionally devastating 10 days of her life, she felt something shift in her chest. Not love, not yet maybe, not for a long time, but the possibility of it. The recognition that maybe, just maybe, her body's insistence that she knew this man wasn't wrong. Maybe she couldn't remember the love they'd had before, but maybe she could feel the potential for what they could have again. 6 months later, Amara stood in front of her bathroom mirror, staring at a positive pregnancy test and feeling the universe's sense of irony was truly terrible. The doctor had told her the head trauma might have affected her fertility, that getting pregnant again would be difficult if not impossible, that the drugging and the stress and the physical damage her body had endured 5 years ago meant she shouldn't count on ever having more children. Apparently, her body hadn't gotten that memo, because here she was, 6 months into slowly rebuilding a relationship with Minjun, 6 months into therapy and memory recovery, and learning to be a family with 3 children who were finally calling him Appa without hesitation, and she was pregnant. Again. Minjun was going to absolutely lose his mind. She found him in the foundation office she'd opened 3 months ago with the compensation money she'd finally received from Kang Construction, money that was rightfully hers for her father's death, plus damages for the attempted murder, plus about 15 other legal settlements. The Emmanuel Okafor Foundation for Immigrant Worker Protection was a small but growing, offering free legal assistance to foreign workers in Korea who were being exploited or abused by their employers. It was her father's legacy and her revenge all wrapped into one, taking the money from the family that had killed him and using it to protect people in his memory. Min-jun was sitting at the conference table reviewing foundation paperwork. He'd insisted on helping despite her protests that she could manage alone, and she'd finally accepted that he genuinely wanted to support her work without trying to control it. When she walked in, holding the pregnancy test behind her, he looked up and smiled in that soft way he smiled only for her now, like she was something precious he was afraid might disappear.
"Are you all right?" he asked immediately, his ability to read her emotions bordering on supernatural now. "You look pale." "I need to tell you something," Amara said, sitting down across from him. "And you're probably going to freak out." "Is it bad?" Min-jun asked, tension immediately visible in his shoulders. "Are you hurt? Are the kids okay? Is someone—" "We're pregnant," Amara blurted out, unable to draw it out any longer. Min-jun froze, blinked, processed. Then, slowly, carefully, as if speaking to something fragile, he said, "We're what?" "Pregnant," Amara repeated, putting the test on the table between them. I know the doctor said it would be difficult. I know we're just starting to figure out this relationship thing. I know we're not even officially together yet. We're just taking it slow and rebuilding trust and learning each other. I know this is terrible timing, but here we are, pregnant, again." Min-jun stared at the test for a long moment. Then he looked up at her, and Amara was shocked to see his eyes were wet with tears. "I thought I'd missed it," he said, his voice breaking. "I thought I'd missed my chance to be there for a pregnancy, to go to ultrasounds and feel the baby kick and be there for the birth. I thought that was gone forever." "So you're not angry?" Amara asked carefully. "Angry?" Min-jun stood up, walked around the table, and knelt down in front of her chair, taking her hands carefully in his like he was holding something infinitely precious. "Amara, I am the opposite of angry. I am terrified and overwhelmed and incredibly grateful and absolutely honored that you're giving me a second chance to do this right." "We're not even married," Amara pointed out, though her heart was melting at his expression. "Then marry me," Min-jun said immediately. Amara laughed, beside herself. "That's not how proposals work." "I'm serious," Min-jun said, and Amara realized he was. "I know we're taking things slow. I know you're still recovering memories and building trust and learning to feel safe with me again. I know we agreed not to rush anything. But Amara, I love you. I've loved you for 5 years. I loved you when you remembered me, and I love you now when you're learning to know me again. And I will love you if you never get those memories back. I want to marry you. I want to be there for this pregnancy every single day. I want to make sure you never feel alone or scared or uncertain about us again." "Min-jun," Amara started, but he kept going. "You don't have to answer now. I know this is a lot. I know I'm probably pushing too hard. Take all the time you need. But I need you to know that I'm all in, completely, forever. You and me and our 4 children." "4?" Amara interrupted. 3 + 1, Min-jun clarified, gesturing to her still flat stomach with a smile that transformed his whole face. 4 children. Our family. That's what I want. What I've always wanted. From the moment I realized I was falling in love with you 7 years ago, in that study at 3 in the morning, when you saw me at my worst and didn't run away. Amara felt tears sliding down her own face now. I did run away, though, eventually. Because you thought I didn't love you, Min-jun said gently. Because my mother tried to murder you, not because you wanted to leave. And now you're here, and we found each other again. And we have a second chance that most people never get. I'm not wasting it. Ask me again in 3 months, Amara said finally, when I'm not emotionally overwhelmed by surprise pregnancy hormones and can think clearly about whether I want to marry someone I'm still learning to trust. 3 months, Min-jun agreed immediately. But I'm warning you now, I'm going to spend those 3 months proving to you every single day that I'm worth marrying." He kept that promise. For 3 months, Min-jun showed up in every way that mattered. He went to every doctor's appointment, taking notes and asking questions, and holding her hand through the first ultrasound that showed 1 healthy baby this time, not 3. He researched pregnancy nutrition and made sure her office always had the weird food combinations she craved. He took the triplets to the park every weekend so she could rest, and brought them back with stories about their day that made her chest ache with how much he'd learned to know them. He supported her foundation work without trying to take over, offering business advice when asked, and backing off immediately when she said she needed to figure something out herself. He went to therapy with her to work through the trust issues and communication problems that had destroyed them the first time. He was patient when she had nightmares about being drugged, nightmares where Se-yeon's face loomed over her, saying, "Make sure she can't come back." He let her set the pace for physical intimacy, never pushing, always asking, making it clear that her comfort mattered more than his desires. And, slowly, carefully, Amara found herself falling in love with him, not remembering the love they'd had before, but building something new, something that felt different but also somehow right, like coming home to a place you'd never been, but your soul recognized anyway. 3 months later, when Min-jun asked again on one knee in the foundation office, with the triplets hiding behind the door watching and giggling, Amara said yes, not because she'd gotten all her memories back. She hadn't, and the doctor said she probably never would completely. Not because the trust was perfect. They still thought sometimes about his tendency to try to protect her instead of treating her as an equal partner, and her tendency to push him away when she felt vulnerable, but because she'd learned who he was now, not just who he'd been before. Because she'd watched him become a father their children adored. Because she'd seen him cry when his mother was sentenced to life in prison and held him through that grief, even though part of her wanted to cheer. Because she'd fallen in love with him again in a completely different way, and this time it was her choice, her decision, not something that happened when she didn't have all the information. They got married 6 months later, in a small ceremony at Pastor David and Grace's church, the same church that had saved Amara 5 years ago. Kamsi was the ring bearer, taking his job with intense seriousness. Aluchi was so excited he nearly dropped the rings 3 times during the ceremony. Zuri with the flower girl, scattering petals with her characteristic quiet grace. And when Amara walked down the aisle, 7 months pregnant this time, wearing a dress Grace had helped her pick out, toward a man who'd spent 7 years loving her through everything, she felt something click into place that she hadn't even realized was missing. This was right. This was home. This was family. The baby was born 2 months later, a healthy boy they named Emmanuel after Amara's father. Min-jun cried through the entire delivery, holding Amara's hand and whispering encouragement and thanking her over and over for giving him this chance to be present for his child's birth. And when they placed Emmanuel in Amara's arms, and she looked up at Min-jun holding their newborn son, while their 3 older children crowded around the hospital bed to meet their baby brother, Amara felt complete in a way she hadn't felt in 5 years. 1 year after the wedding, Amara was working late at the foundation office when a letter arrived from Seoul Correctional Facility. She stared at the return address for a long moment before opening it with shaking hands. Inside was a formal notice that Chairman Kang Se-yeon had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. She had 6 months to live, maybe less, and she was requesting to see her grandchildren one final time before she died. Amara read the letter 3 times, then called Min-jun. "Your mother wants to see the children," she said when he answered. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then Min-jun's voice, carefully controlled. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know," Amara admitted honestly. "She tried to kill me. She killed my father. She stole 5 years of our lives. Part of me wants to burn this letter and pretend I never received it." "And the other part?" Min-jun asked gently. "The other part remembers that she's dying," Amara said. "And she's your mother. And she's the grandmother my children will never really know.
And one day, Kamsi or Oluchi or Zuri or Emmanuel might ask me if they ever met their grandmother before she died, and I'll have to decide what to tell them. This is your decision, Minjun said. Whatever you choose, I'll support it. She hurt you more than anyone. You get to decide if she deserves forgiveness or just consequences. Amara sat with the letter for a week, thinking about forgiveness and justice and what kind of example she wanted to set for her children. In the end, she made a choice that surprised even herself. She went to the prison alone, leaving the children with Grace and Minjun at home. She sat across from Se-yeon in the visitation room, looking at this woman who'd once been powerful and terrifying, and now just old and dying and still utterly unrepentant based on the cold calculation in her eyes. "I'm not bringing the children," Amara said before Se-yeon could speak. "You don't deserve to know them. You don't deserve to touch them or see them or pretend you care about them when you tried to murder them before they were born."
Se-yeon's face didn't change. "Then why did you come?" "Because I needed to see you," Amara said honestly. "I needed to look at the woman who killed my father and tried to kill me and see that you're just human. Not a monster, not some terrifying villain, just a sick old woman who made terrible choices and is dying alone because of them." "I'm not alone," Se-yeon said coldly. "You have nothing," Amara interrupted. "Your son hasn't visited you in a year. You have no friends, no family who claims you, no one who will mourn you when you die. You built an empire and you died alone anyway. That's your legacy." Se-yeon's mask cracked slightly. "And what's yours? Marrying my son and taking my family's money and pretending you're better than me?" "My legacy," Amara said calmly, standing up to leave, "is 4 beautiful children who will grow up knowing that love is more important than power. It's a foundation that protects people like my father from people like you. It's a second chance at life that I built from nothing when you tried to destroy me. It's knowing that I survived you, and I'm happy, and I have everything you tried to take from me. That's my legacy." She walked out without looking back, leaving Se-yeon alone in that prison visitation room. And when she got home and Minjun asked how it went, she smiled and said, "It's over. Really, truly over. She can't hurt us anymore." 3 months later, Chairman Kang Se-yeon died in prison. Minjun attended the funeral alone, said goodbye to the mother he'd loved before he knew who she really was, and came home to a house full of laughter and children, and a wife who'd learned to love him twice. And that, more than any revenge or justice, felt like the truest kind of happy ending. So here's where we end this story. Amara got her father's justice and built something beautiful from the ashes of what Se-yeon tried to destroy. Minjun found the family he'd lost and learned that love was worth more than any empire. And 4 children grew up knowing that sometimes people forget the past, but love has a way of finding you again anyway, in different forms, in second chances, in the miraculous way broken things can be made whole. Now, I need to know from you, watching this right now, wherever you are in the world, drop a comment and tell me, would you have visited the woman who tried to murder you if she was dying? Would you have let your children meet her, or denied her that like Amara did? Because that's the kind of question that doesn't have an easy answer, and I'm curious what you would choose. Hit that like button if this story moved you, subscribe if you want more stories like this, and share this with someone who needs to hear that it's possible to rebuild your life even after someone tries to destroy it. God sometimes lets us forget the painful past so we can see clearly who deserves to be in our beautiful future. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.
K Afro Tales. The weak will become strong one day.